First of all, the shir is Le'ilu Nishmas Mara Zelda Bas Rebbe Eliezer Aleha Shalom. First of all, today's Rosh Chodesh, as you probably all know. So a good Chodesh, everybody. It's Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. And it's an interesting Hashgacha Pratis. I'm not even sure what it means, but I'll share it with you for whatever it's worth. Rosh Chodesh Adar is always 2 days Rosh Chodesh. And if there are two others, both others are 2 days Rosh Chodesh. It always works out that way. Because Adar Rishon, when there is a second Adar, it always has 30 days. So we have a lot of Rosh Chodesh as it relates to Chodesh Adar. And Chodesh Adar is a Chodesh of Simcha, like it has in the Gemara, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, that Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, that the whole month of Adar is a time of Simcha. Although it would appear that the Simcha of Adar is connected to a certain event, that's connected to a certain time, the fact is that the entirety of the month of Adar is a time of Simcha, from the very beginning of Adar. And when there are two Adars, we have 60 days of Simcha. The Gemara connects the Simcha of Adar to the lessening of Simcha of Chodesh Menachem Av. But just like Mishenichnas Av Matin B'Simcha, so too Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. The fact is that in Chodesh Menachem Av, for the first 9 or 10 days there is Avelis, but people make chasanas in Chodesh Menachem Av. After Tisha B'Av, people make chasanas. So though the Lashon of the Gemara indicates that the whole Chodesh is a Chodesh of Avelis, but the Avelis is V'ikir in the beginning of the Chodesh. But Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, I haven't seen anybody say that the Simcha ends at a certain point. The entirety of the Chodesh is a Chodesh of Simcha. And it's connected, directly it's connected to the Purim and the Yom Tov of Purim. But one of the things that it says is that Chodesh Adar is Bari Mazli. It means to say that in the month of Adar, the Mazel of Yidden, by the way, Mazel does not mean luck. Mazel means the way the energies from the Rebishter come down into the world, that it passes through, if you will, Levushim or Malachim. And Chodesh Adar, I don't know about speakers and sound systems, but the mazel of Yidden is body, is a gesunte mazel. That's why it says in the Gemara that if a person has a mishpat with a goy lahavdil, it's a very good time. It's a very, very good time to take care of business lahavdil with goyim and chodesh adar, because body mazli. And what it means is, everybody knows that there's a reality that Hashem created that's called derech hateva. But we also know that derech hateva is governed by Hashem. There's direct hashgacha pratis and everything that happens. In Chodesh Adar, the teva is healthier. Not only does Hashem perform more miracles, but the teva itself is like it's into there. The Eibishter's connection to Klal Yisrael is healthier. And therefore, when you're involved lahavdil with a goy, and goyim are certainly subject to darkei hateva, to the limitations of nature, Chodesh Adar is a good time to take care of business, because the mazel of Yidden is healthy. But in any event, it's a Chodesh of Simcha, and it's also a Chodesh of Geula. We're beginning now the second Adar, so Shetaka be Benes should be Simchas by everybody, and it should be the ultimate Geula. The Gemara asks the question, how come we make Purim in the second Adar? There's two Adars. The celebration of Purim, the Yom Tov of Purim, is in the second Adar. Okay, the first Adar there's Purim Katan and Shushan Purim Katan, but that's not the big deal. The big deal is Purim. And the question is asked, why do we celebrate Purim in the second Adar? Why not celebrate Purim in the first Adar? The first Adar is first. It's first, it's primary. And the Gemara's answer is because we want to be seimech, we want to join, we want to bring together Geula LaGeula. The Geula of Purim with the Geula of Pesach. Mismach Geula LaGeula. So therefore you want to make Purim, and the expression is Adar HaSamuch LeNisan. Adar, which is closest to Nisan. Nisan is a Chodesh HaGeula, and Adar is a Chodesh HaGeula. So you want to be Seimech, you want to make near one another the Geula of Purim to the Geula of Pesach. What's the difference between the Geula of Purim and the Geula of Pesach? What's the difference? The difference is that the Geula of Purim was not a Geula Shleima. It wasn't a complete Geula. The Gemara emphasizes that after the Purim story and during the Purim story, Akata Avded Achashverosh Hanan, the Jewish people were avodim, were slaves to Achashverosh. It's an obvious diuk in the Megillah. if you remember how the Megillah says that the Gemara says as a milk of the Chaviva, people remember the story of the Megillah. And the last piece of the Megillah says that is Achashverosh collecting taxes. Remember? And as a child, the Malamed never got that far. We never got to Perek Yud. But it was always strange to us, Achashverosh is collecting taxes. And one of the explanations is that Hashem did all these wonderful miracles. And Yidden remained in Golus. And the way this is indicated is at the end of the Megillah is with Vayosar Melech Achashverosh Mas. And there's two ways to look at this. The idea that after the great miracle of Purim, Yidden remained in Golus can be viewed in two ways. The obvious way is that's a chesaron. There's something wrong with Purim. Because if Purim were the highest Yom Tov that it could possibly be, after Purim Yidden would be free, like after Pesach Yidden were free, and after Chanukah Yidden were free. Chanukah happened in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Chanukah didn't happen in times of Golus. And in fact, if you know the history of Bayis Sheni, when the Jewish people built the second Beis HaMikdash, they weren't free people at all. The second Beis HaMikdash was built with the Reshus of a Goy, whose name was Kodesh, Cyrus, who was Melech Podas. He was the king of Persia. And a few decades after the second Beis HaMikdash was built, the Malchus Podas was overrun by Malchus Yovan, by Alexander Smugdan, Alexander the Great. And he conquered the whole world. And the Gemara tells a story how he came to conquer Yerushalayim. And Shimon HaTzadik, who's mentioned in the Pirkei Avos, he was a Kohen Gadol, and he went out to greet Alexander Smugdun, and he went out dressed like a Kohen Gadol. And the Yidden told him that this is Tisgara B'umes, he's showing disrespect to Alexander to come out with him dressed like himself in a very royal outfit, and Shimon HaTzadik disregarded his warning. And when he came towards Alexander got off the horse and he bowed to him. And Alexander left Yerushalayim alone, and he told his soldiers that when he goes into battle, this man fights with him. He saw the likeness of Shimon HaTzadik. Alexander Mugdan conquered the whole world in a very short time. I mean, his whole life is a very strange story. He died at the grand old age of 33, and he had time to conquer the ganze Welt. When Alexander died, his kingdom was divided into three: the northern kingdom and the eastern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is Rome, and the southern kingdom is Mitzrayim, is Egypt. It was called the Ptolemaic dynasty. The kings had the name Talmai. And the eastern kingdom was Syria, was Greece, was what is now Syria is this. And each one of these 3/3 of the ancient Greek Empire had a chance to rule over the Yidden. Right after Alexander died and his kingdom was divided into 3, Israel was under the jurisdiction of the Egyptian kings, of King Talmai. And Yidden was subject to all kinds of problems. The kings of Egypt they weren't necessarily giving Yidden complete freedom. And then in the middle of the time of Bayis Sheni, we were under the jurisdiction of the Syrians. And that's when the Nes of Chanukah happened. And when the Yidden fought back against the Chashmonaim, against the Greeks, against the Yevonim, they were Syrian Greeks. They were culturally Greeks, and they were Syrians. And they defeated them. Yidden had real independence. The only time in Bayis Sheni that Yidden were truly independent was after the story of Chanukah for about 100 years. And then the Romans, the third of the Greek Empire came into Israel about 100 years before the Churban, and the Romans destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. So after the story of Chanukah, Yidden were free of any kind of jurisdiction of Lahavdal, any kind of goy. On the other hand, after the story of Purim, in the Megillah itself, it's indicated that Vayosam Melech Achashverosh Mas was still paying taxes to Achashverosh Hagoy, Hatipish, like the Gemara calls him. So the Geula of Purim is not a Geula Shlema. So on the one hand, you look at Purim and say, well, I guess Purim is not as great as the other Yom Tovim. And that's true, because we want Geula Shlema. We don't want Geula She'ena Shlema. But there's another angle, there's another aspect to the significance of Purim not being a Geula Shlema, and that is that the message of Purim is that even in Golus, Hashem favors Yidden. There's the Taina, there's those who say that all the miracles that Hashem performs for Klal Yisrael happened in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, when Hashem was revealed. And in times of Golus, we don't see, we don't see miracles, we don't see the hand of Hashem. And in a nutshell, we don't see the favoritism that Hashem shows to Klal Yisrael. It appears random, it appears that the relationship between Yidden and the Rebishter is the same lahavdal as the relationship between the Rebishter and Goyim. And the story of Purim says that that's not the case. That's the way it looks. And the truth of the matter is, Achashverosh is collecting taxes, and Yidden are in Golus. but the Eibishter saves Yidden from all kinds of tzaras that could possibly be. So there's the flip side. In other words, on the one hand we say that Purim is not a perfect Geula. On the other hand we say Purim demonstrates that even when the condition of Yidden is not perfect, the relationship between Hashem and Yidden is still special. So that's what Purim is about. It's a geula. It's arguably a geula she'ein shlema. Yidden remain in galus. So the Gemara says that we want to be mismach geula l'geula. We want to bring together the two geulas, the geula of Purim and the geula of Pesach. That from the geula which is not shlema, which demonstrates the idea that Hashem shows Yidden favoritism in time of galus. And God, this is what I was when I said this is what I forgot. The expression that's brought in all kinds of svarim. And everybody knows it, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with repeating what everybody knows already. Kivsa achas beishivim zeivim vehi mishtameres. Hashem does miracles for Yidden all the time. Sometimes the miracles are very revealed. Sometimes the miracles are more concealed. Sometimes the miracles don't like miracles at all. Sometimes the miracle looks like tests. But one of the greatest miracles that exists in the whole creation is the fact that kivsa achas, we're one sheep, bein shivim ze'evim, among 70 wolves, vehi mishtameres, and it's preserved. Goyim cannot destroy Yidden no matter how hard they have tried, unfortunately. This is, in a very real way, a greater miracle than all the other miracles. Because the impression is, the way it looks, Kvayachal is, that Rebishter is, Valachti Mocham Bekeri. Hashem doesn't show us favoritism. But He's showing us favoritism, on the contrary, in the times of Golus. As covered as it is, the specialness of Yidden is more emphasized or demonstrated in the miracle of Jewish survival. I've mentioned this in the past, that I heard this from a student of mine, that there was a Russian thinker in the beginning of this century. He wasn't much of a religious person, let me assure you. He was a communist who said, probably in frustration, that as long as there are Jews, there's proof that there's a God. And he's right. As long as there's Jews, there's proof that there's a God, and because we're the Yam HaNitzchi, we're an eternal people. And we're not eternal for all the reasons that the anthropologists give and all the social scientists give. We're the eternal people who are connected to the Rebishter, to Hashem. And so long as Hashem is, we are. And Hashem is the Nitzchi, so Am B'nai Yisrael, Bonei Matam Hashem Alekechem, is also Nitzchi. And that's the uniqueness of the celebration of Purim, even over the other Yom Tovim. The idea that in Golus, it may appear that it's not that way, but in fact Hashem shows Yidden a very, very special favoritism. But in any event, the Gemara says that the Geula of Purim is Taka Geula She'ein Shleima. It's not a complete Geula. But we want to join Mismach Geula L'Geula, that from the Geula of Purim, which is a Geula which arguably is not so whole, not so perfect, not so complete, we should go straight into the Geula Amitis Vashleima. It says in Rashi and Shas that all Geulas are connected. Even a person has a private Geula, an individual, experiences the union of Geula. So the Lashon is Shem Geula Chad. All Geulas are connected. So from a little Geula comes a big Geula until the perfect Geula, the Geula which is connected to Pesach, where it's not like by Purim where Yidden Ataka have no influences except the Torah and Hashem and the Beis HaMikdash and so on and so forth. Whatever the case is, the bottom line is, the point of this whole little thought is that we make Purim in the second order. So the emes is the whole order is a time of Simcha. And especially the second order, because that's when we have Pesach. And Mishenichnas Order, Marbin B'Simcha, the entire month is a time of joy. And as we talk so often, Mishenichnas Order, Marbin B'Simcha means the Yid has to Pasha B'Freilach, has to be happy. And what's important to understand is that Simcha is a derech and avodas Hashem. Or to say it in other words, there's two interpretations of what joy is. The first interpretation of a joy is that when things are wonderful, when everything is in order, we're happy. If everybody is well fed and properly clothed and the house is warm and comfortable and beautiful, people are happy. The joy, that's the consequence of life. That's not real joy, and the right word is not joy altogether. The right word is actually pleasure. And there's a very, very big difference between joy and pleasure. In Torah, joy is an avodah. Joy is an avodah means it's not the result of life, it's the basis for life. A yid is freilach. Finished. Even if there are nisyonos, tests, challenges, things that a Jew doesn't understand, including things which are very, very difficult to understand, still, the condition of a Yid is Simcha, and the Simcha itself gives us a perspective. The Simcha itself helps us deal with all kinds of situations, and moreover, moreover, the simcha itself changes the situation. It says in Sfarim, and it's a difficult thing to understand, and it's even more difficult thing to live, but as they state in the Heilige Sfarim, it's brought in the Chavis Alvavis from the Rabbeinu Bechaya, from the Rabbeinu Bachya, from the Rishonim. It's a very famous thing. I spoke about it a couple of years ago, that when a Yid has betachon, and if you recall, we had a lengthy discussion about betachon. Betachon means that a situation is dire, is difficult, and a Yid trusts that it's going to be good. And there's two levels. The lower level is that Kol Ma Da'ovid Rachman L'Tav Ovid, Hashem knows what He's doing, and if Hashem does things which are not so good, He knows what He's doing, so I accept Hashem's judgment even if I don't like it. That's called emunah. That's not betachon. Betachon is the situation is not, it doesn't appear good, and a Jew trusts that it will be good. He believes that since Hashem is a Kol Yochel, Hashem can do anything He wants. Not only He can make the situation good, He will make the situation good. So it says in Sfarim that the betachon itself makes it good. A Yid's trust, a Yid's positiveness, a Yid's joy in life and in his relationship with Hashem, that itself makes things better. I mean, what joy is, we spoke about it recently here too. Joy is a wonderful, it's an antidote to all kinds of sicknesses. But the key to simcha is, you can't wait for an excuse to be happy. That's not the way it works. You wait for excuses to be happy, you'll always get to it tomorrow. Joy is an avodah. Avodah means it's a job. It's something that I undertake. I'm going to serve Hashem with simcha. I'm going to live my life with a positive attitude. I'm going to be an optimist rather than a pessimist, because we always have that option at all times, and that joy itself lifts us up and it makes our life better. It's true a ganze Yod, it's true all year. It's especially true Mishenichnas Oder Mad B'Simcha. Grade, an interesting correlation to the Parshas HaShavua. This week, as you all know, we read Parshas Pekudei. Firstly, and I'll see if I'll remember to get back to this. Firstly, as you probably know, this Shabbos is also Shabbos Chazak. We finished Sefer Shmos, which is the Chumash of the Geula. And the Sefer Shmos, from start to finish, has a theme. It has a message. It has an insight that travels through it from the beginning to the end. And the theme of the Sefer Shmos is that you can go into Golus, and that Eibishter takes them out of Golus, and that the idea that Yidden go into Golus and Hashem takes them out of Golus is that Yidden should serve Hashem, because the way the Sefer Shmos ends is not we're free. Yes, we are free. We have no Shibud Malchus. We're not subject to any other nation. But the consequence of that freedom is that we build Hashem Yisbarach a home. In the 70s, in the early 70s, there was a movement which, you don't have to be that old to remember it. Let my people go, right? The Vaha'ir, Soviet Russia was Hegeres. Soviet Russia was sealed. There was what they call the Iron Curtain. And Yidden was suffering. So there was a big movement in the early 70s, let my people go. They used to demonstrate in front of the United Nations, they would demonstrate in front of the Russian embassy that they have to let the Jews go. The refuseniks, as they were called. And by the way, think about the fact that we talk about these events in past tense. And you need a bigger raya that kifsa achas v'yeshivim zevim v'himas. I mean, who would dream? But you just go back 15 years, or even less than that, and envision that in 15 years from today we're going to talk about the Soviet Union as something that's literally a relic, a piece of history. It's a miracle from Hashem that is so great that we don't even know how to say wow. Sometimes a miracle happens and you get excited. Sometimes a miracle happens, you don't get excited because it's no big deal. Sometimes a miracle happens and it's so grand, it's so magnificent, it's so gigantic that we don't even respond. But that's really the miracles that have occurred as it relates to the Soviet Union and the change of the whole world, Bemis. It's so radical, it's so dramatic that we don't even say wow, we don't even notice. But in any event, so there was this movement, let my people go. And the Rebbe then was against it. He felt that it was making life difficult for Jews in Russia, but okay, we'll talk the debate a different time. But one of the things that he spoke by the Fabrengens then was that if they're quoting the Pasuk, they should quote the Pasuk correctly. Let my people go is a paraphrase from a Pasuk in Chumash. That Moshe Rabbeinu told Parei Melech Mitzrayim as the Shliach of Hashem, Shalach Asami. Let my people go. But there's another word that was deleted from the quote. V'yavduni. And Yidden should be Hashem's servants. Because the truth of the matter is, you take a person out of a state of slavery and you free him. It's another form of slavery. That's all it is. It's one condition of slavery into a different condition of slavery. But Hashem wants to take Yid out of slavery and make him free. And what's the freedom of a Yid? That he's the Eved of Hashem. The freedom of a Jew is when you're connected to Hashem, you learn Torah, you do mitzvahs, that's when you're free. So the Sefer Shmos begins with the Golus and it ends with the Geula. It continues with the Geula. But the sign that the Geula is perfect and whole is that Yidden serve Hashem. They build Hashem a home, and like it finishes off in this week's Parsha Take, Hashem moves into the house. Hashem settles. Hashem moves into his house. But in any event, so we finished this week the Sefer Shmos, and tomorrow in Shul, Shabbos in Shul, we'll all scream Chazak. Right? Chazak means we should celebrate the Torah that we completed, and Chazak also means we should strengthen ourselves in the Torah that we should continue to learn. And of course, it's not just the Torah, it's the Gadol Limud HaMevle De Maisa. We learn Torah to do mitzvahs, and the test that the Torah is the Eibishter's Torah, and that Stam Hazeh HaChochmah is that the Torah translates into doing what Hashem wants, and that's the Chazak. We strengthen ourselves that we should learn, and from the learning should come to Maisa. But in any event, in Chodesh Adar, the Chazak, B'klal, all the time, especially in Chodesh Adar, the Chazak is a Chazak, strengthening ourselves in B'tachin and in Simcha, in knowing that Hashem is paying attention. He notices us even when we don't notice that He's noticing. Faket, He notices now more than ever. I told you last week, we spoke about Vayakhel, and I said to you that I owed you a debt. I want to talk a little bit about Pekudei. What is our Parsha about? For those who don't know, I'll give you a very brief review. Last week's Parsha, as I said to you then, is a very easy Parsha to learn and a very difficult Parsha to learn. I said it and nobody, whatever, I can say whatever I want. Everybody is very nice enough just to trust that I'm not making anything up. The reason it's an easy Parsha to learn is because it's almost no Rashi. And the reason there's almost no Rashi is because it's the same as Parshas Truma. The reason it's so difficult to learn is because it's only almost Parshas Truma. It's not exactly Parshas Truma. So imagine reading two psukim in Torah, and they're almost identical. And Balkiya, understand, when he's looking in a Sefer Torah, he doesn't have Nekudis, and he doesn't have the Taimim, he doesn't have the Trop, and he has to remember this is Vayakhel and not Truma. It's very easy to get lost and to make mistakes, and that's why if you were in Shul last Shabbos, you must have heard 15 or 20 times, Ace, S, Ace, S. The Balkiya says S and it's supposed to be Ace, and the Balkiya says Ace and it's supposed to be S. It's a lot more fun when Vayakhel and Pekudei are together, then you hear Ace and S, not 15 times, but 25 times. But in any event, Pekudei is a continuation of Vayakhel. The Parsha begins with an interesting discussion, and arguably a discussion which is questionable. The Torah Pasha does bookkeeping. And as it says in the Chumash, and the Medrash explains, it's not the Torah doing bookkeeping. It's Moshe Rabbeinu doing bookkeeping, and the Torah saying, good idea. Yidden gave gifts to the Beis HaMikdash. They gave gold, and they gave silver, and they gave copper. They gave a lot of gold, and a lot of copper, and even more silver. So what do you think the wonderful nation of Jews did? And we discussed last week how they were so generous in their gifts, right? Remember that the Nesiim had anticipated there wouldn't be enough and they would replace what was missing and so on and so forth. So the Yidden gave wonderful gifts, but the day after they gave their gifts, they all started to calculate, tabulate. Moshe Rabbeinu was wearing a new suit, he was wearing another hat, and the Am Kshayedef of Yidden is always functional. Yidden are always in high gear, and if you can't keep them in high gear for something good, immediately they get distracted and they kochen sich in Narishkeiten. So Moshe Rabbeinu tabulated at ausgerechnet the itzois of the Mishkan to the penny. And in this week's Parsha, to the shekel, to the coin, to a gold coin. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Parsha begins, Eile Pekudei Mishkan, Mishkan Ha'edus. Moshe Rabbeinu Pashat sat down with the Yidden and says, look, I have a new suit, but I paid for it myself. I bought myself a new hat, but I paid for that myself. I didn't take Chas v'Sholom any of the money of Yidden. And the Medrash says that Moshe, of course, doesn't know anybody in Cheshbeinis. Moshe Rabbeinu, doch Moshe Rabbeinu. Notwithstanding the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't have to explain anything to anybody, Moshe Rabbeinu, so to speak, went the extra mile to take away the possibility of a Jew thinking chas v'shalom a thought which is not appropriate, and he tabulated exactly what the expenditure was, how much was collected and how much was used and what it was used for, and so on and so forth. And the Midrashim bring psukim from Torah, from Nevi'im, and from Ksuvim, that when it comes to money, mumness, it's very, very important that there should be integrity, there should be honesty. And there are all kinds of halachas that govern when it comes to money, that people have to be, the hand of tish, in a way that you're not, even if you're honest, you're not allowed to chas v'shalom allow people to even consider, you're not allowed to leave the possibility, the option that a person is being dishonest. One of the halachas is that there's no such thing as a tzedakah that is governed by one person. Every tzedakah has to have at least two members who collect the money, who calculate the money, and who keep track of the money. But for the sake of honesty, I'll tell you a very interesting thing. Everybody knows what machtas hashekel is, right? Machtas hashekel, this tells you the degree, the extreme that the Torah goes to for honesty. Machtas hashekel is a mitzvah. Every year, people have to give a half shekel to participate in the karbonos. Okay, the men have an obligation. Whether women are allowed to or not, you can ask a rabbi. Whether kohenim have an obligation or not is another controversy. But there's a mitzvah of machtas hashekel. What was the machtas hashekel used for? It was called the lishka. The lishka was a special chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, and this chamber was pushed a room full of coins. It was a room just filled with silver coins. In other words, they didn't deposit the money in a bank account. They didn't take the silver coins and replace them with gold coins or with gold bars or something like that. They left the machtas shekel just the way they were, and there was a room filled with machtas shekel. The mashmoah says the shkolim were all over the floor. And in this room there was 3 big barrels and 3 little barrels. If you're interested in the particulars, you can explore it yourself. But here was what interesting was. There was a person who used to go in 3 times a year to take money. It was called Trumas HaLishka, to take the money from the machtas shekel for karbonos. 3 times a year they would go in with a special pot or I don't know what you call it, a bowl, and fill it with silver coins, and they would take it out for the future expenditure of the karbonos. The halacha was that the kohen who went into the machtas shekel wore special clothing, and there were no pockets. That was the din. There were no pockets. Who's going to be choshev that kohen is going to steal? There's no pockets. Moreover, the kohen went into the lishka by himself. There was a kohen who stood outside and talked to him the whole time. Why? Because if he's going to stop speaking, he may put a coin in his mouth. Now, how likely is that to happen? It's probably not so likely, but this is the point. This is a fact that when it comes to mumminess, when it comes to money, the need for honesty, and not just need for honesty, to bavarinen, to forewarn that another person shouldn't be choshev chas v'shalom, shouldn't suspect a person, even if the suspicion is based on nothing, is a priority in Torah. And Moshe Rabbeinu personally teaches us this lesson. It does say that there were Yidden who meranin, who questioned Moshe Rabbeinu. And like I said, the Am Kshayerev of Yidden are always working in overdrive, and if you can't find them something good to focus on, and they have extra time, the Am Kshayerev finds what they kvetch and complain about. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he calculated how much gold and how much silver and how much copper was used to the coin. And the Medrashim say that this was Moshe's own initiative. He did it on his own. And the Eibishter Hashem Yisbarach concurred, said, yes, that's the way it has to be. A Yid has to be honest, ordentlich. And if it was good enough for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's certainly good for the rest of us, a person who's involved in Stuckis. It's very important that you should bavoren, you should forewarn, you should do what is necessary so that people should not be able to have a chshad, even if the chshad is based on nothing. The part that's hard about this, for those of you who are involved in tzedakah, is the other side of that coin is tznius. When the person raises money, they're giving it to somebody. And one of the most important aspects of giving tzedakah is to honor the person who's at the receiving end of that tzedakah. You don't want chas v'shalom to hurt a person's feelings. And if I'm in the Gemara wegen der Maises, that there was one of the Tanoim, or Amiroim, I forget, he used to go give matan b'seiser. he would give money to tzedakah b'seiser. And somebody, every morning he would come and he would throw money into the house. And the Yidden didn't know where the money was coming from, so they ran after him and they were going to catch him. So he jumped into a fiery oven. He was ready to push it, kill himself, take his life, not to embarrass them. It wasn't his frumkeit that he wanted a scharing aneten for tznius. He didn't want that they should know from where the money is coming. So this is the balance that a person who's an expert, who's involved in what, like it says in the Siddur, to be a Oisik b'tzarchei tzibur b'emunah is a special kind of person, and it's a special kind of, when it comes to Jews, you're helping everybody, and all the people do is talk about you. If the real world, there's a Jew that I know who's involved in a special kind of stuff. He helps Yidden in an unbelievable way. And I'm involved with him as a Sibah. In other words, he talks to me more than I'll talk to somebody else. And he said, what do you get for this? This one talks, that one talks, another one talks. But that's, if you want to be a Noisig B'tzarchei Tzibur B'emunah, it just goes with the territory. And you can't even have a taina to another person. It's the nature of the beast. That's just the way it is. But both sides have to be preserved. It's extremely important that you honor and you're sensitive to protecting the identity of the recipients of the tzedakah, and at the same time, as Moshe Rabbeinu himself teaches, it's extremely important to do everything in your power to eliminate any chshad. Not chas v'sholom because there's a reason to be choshed, but because vayisim nekim, Yid's hands have to be clean. But that's how the Parsha begins, with Moshe tabulating, mamish to the penny, how much money was used for the Beis HaMikdash and so on and so forth. Then there is a whole long discussion in the Parsha about how the begodim, how the big dekahuna were made. And here also there's almost no Rashi. It's a virtual repetition of Parshas Tetzaveh this time, all the clothing of the kohen as they were prepared. And again also, it's easy to learn and it's hard to learn because the differences are small and subtle. And the last third of Parsha Pekudei is the whole process of actually building the Mishkan. That Yidden finished building the Mishkan, as you know, we spoke about it once on Chanukah. And the Mishkan just sat there and waited 3 months, and Takin Midrashim also, the Yidden started to complain and bicker. You made us invest all this money and do all this work, and now what's sitting around and waiting until the end of Takav Chedesh Adar. The Gula Sheina Shleima Chedesh Adar, that's when the Beis HaMikdash was put up. But in Adar, the erection of the Beis HaMikdash was temporary. When was the Beis HaMikdash put up for keeps, or to say it in the lashon of the pasuk? They built Hashem a home, and the home remained unoccupied. Hashem didn't move in. And they brought Karbanos one day, and they brought Karbanos the second day, and they brought Karbanos the third day, and the fourth day, and the fifth day, and the sixth day, and the seventh day, and the house is empty. And again, our good old friend, the Jews, Havim Tainis, and by Yom HaShmini, there was special Karbanos brought, Ki Hayom Hashem Nira Aleichem, and Hashem moved into the house. Hashem moved in Chedesh Nisan, and it's perhaps consistent. Chedesh Adar is a Geula Sheina Shleima, you build Hashem a home. Chedesh Nisan is a Chedesh of Geula Shleima, the Eibishter moves into his home. What's interesting about the end of Parshas Pekudei is that it describes how Yidden couldn't put the Mishkan together. They couldn't build it. There was just no way for them to put it together. They made it, but they couldn't build it. And the way it's understood is that the inability of Yidden to put up the Mishkan was in itself a miracle. They built it, so they obviously were able to carry it, they were able to lift it and lower it, and all of a sudden it's too heavy for anybody to lift. And Moshe Rabbeinu put the Mishkan together by himself. And Moshe says to Hashem, if all the great experts, the Chachamim Eisei HaMelacha, can't build a Mishkan, how am I going to do it myself? So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you just put your finger to it, and I'll build it. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who had the chus to actually build the Mishkan. It was prepared by everybody else, and Moshe was not allowed to participate. He wasn't allowed to participate in the expenditure. He didn't donate from himself for the building of the Mishkan, nor was he able to participate in the actual craftsmanship, the work that was involved in preparing the Mishkan. And Moshe felt deprived, so Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu the chus that he was the one who actually put it up, and the karbanos were brought, and then the Parshas Pekudei finishes. Hashem moved into the house. That's essentially how Parshas Pekudei finishes. That's a review of the Parsha. What I want to touch on with a little bit more detail is this counting business. I mentioned to you that Moshe Rabbeinu toizgerechend, he counted the money. And the truth of the matter is, we learn Taka from Moshe Rabbeinu that it's important when you have mois of tzedakah, you have money of tzedakah, to be very, very careful how the money is utilized. I mean, Beklau, people who are Gaboy tzedakah know this. You're not allowed to transfer money from one tzedakah to another tzedakah. If you have 4 different organizations that you raise money for, and Beklau, Gaboy tzedakah, that's the way it works. Some of us are not involved in any tzedakahs. Those who are involved in one tzedakah are involved in 5 tzedakahs. That's just the way it goes. And you're not allowed to transfer money from one tzedakah to the next. You have to be very careful, very particular to keep the money separate. It's such the requirement in Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu tabulates. But there's really a very good question as far as this whole counting business is concerned. Because we find, Grade, in a few places in Torah, that counting is not such a good idea. There's a few indications in Chazal and in Torah that it would appear that counting something may not be such a good idea. First of all, a couple of weeks ago, we read Pashas Kisisa. What does it say? Hashem wants to count Yidden. He said, don't count heads, Rashi says, right? Because when you count heads, it's not good. Instead, count coins. You want to know how many Jews there are? Count coins, don't count heads. Because when you count something, it's not considered a desirable thing. In addition, the Gemara says that Eina bracha sheira ela v'bedavar hasomoy min ha'ayin. The blessing of Hashem only rests when bedavar hasomoy min ha'ayin, when you don't see it, when you don't identify it. The minute you identify it and you tabulate, you calculate b'diok how much it is, then it loses the possibility for Hashem's bracha to rest. So you could actually make the argument that it's better not to count than to count. Counting something limited. And that's the name of this week's Parsha Pekudei Mayaan. Everything has to be tabulated, everything has to be calculated to the penny. And you can make the argument it's much better off, as we spoke last week, that things should be Vayakhel-like. How do we explain Vayakhel? You have a big timis, everybody's together, and even if one Jew is not so perfect, so long as you're part of the kehillah, so long as you're part of the group, the chesroinus of the individual are unnoticed. But when you start counting Jews, and you identify each Jew as an individual, or when you start counting individual aspects of anything, they become salte, they become by themselves. And when a Yid is by himself and he's not so perfect, all of his imperfections are very noticeable. So the idea of counting, you could make the case it's not such a good idea. And I saw a medrash, a very interesting medrash, that says this, that when a Jew counts things for himself, counts his own dollars, counts his own private belongings, counts things on a level of what's called in Torah chayil, ordinary, that's no good. It's better not to count. If you don't count, there's a possibility for Hashem's bracha to be, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to tahara, when it comes to tzedakah, when it comes to tahara maisa, when you have to give 1/10 of your grain to the Beis HaMikdash, and when it comes to kedusha, which is even higher than tahara, when it comes to donating money to the Beis HaMikdash, then counting is a very, very desirable thing. You have to dafka count. You have to dafka count. And this is the idea. When you're counting for yourself, you're better off not to count. And when you're counting for the Rebishter, it's a very, very good idea to count. This is what the Medrash says. And I was thinking to myself, why? Why would there be this distinction between when you're counting, Pasha, to know how many dollars you have, to keep track of your money, versus when you're counting to know how much tzedakah there is. And I don't know if this is correct, but just a simple balabatish thought. When a person counts money, there's 2 ways that money can be counted. And it's the same counting. The act is exactly the same, but the spirit is an entirely different spirit. When you count money, one way of counting money is, look how little I have. I only have $10, I only have $20, I only have $100. I can count 1, 2, 3, and this is the end of my mispur. I don't have any more. And you can count, and the kavanah is exactly the opposite. Look how much I have. And there's a very, very big difference between you count and your sense is, look how little it is, and you count when you appreciate how much it is. And perhaps this is not a right thing to say, but it's true. When you count your own money, your tendency is, look how little it is. When you count the money, if it's stuck, it's look how much it is. So when it comes to counting your own geld, Torah says don't count. It's better not to know. Let the Rebishter's bracha rest. There's $10 in your pocket, and when it comes to spending it, there'll be 20. When it comes to money of tzedakah, there's an advantage of counting. And the reason for this is, besides for the honesty and the integrity that I mentioned before, is because there's a concept in Torah that when you count something, you make it choshev. I spoke about that at length many times in the last few years. That when things are sold on a market, there are different ways that things are sold. One way that things are sold is by weight, by weight. Another way things are sold is by volume. Volume means to fill up a box, or to fill up a bucket, or to fill up a bag. And another way that things are sold is by the piece. And the fact is that an item that is not very expensive is sold by volume, by just fill up a box. If it's more expensive, you sell it by weight. And if it's very expensive, you don't sell it not by volume and not by weight, you sell it by the piece. And if it's even more expensive, you actually evaluate the difference between one piece and another. And that's why the halacha is dover shebeminyan loy batel. When you count things, they become permanent, they become loy batel. Briefly, what this means is as follows. You and you all have kitchens, and you all know the problems, God forbid, of shailas and Nisav Heter. You have a fleishik pot with a little milchiks, or a milchik pot with a little fleishiks, and you run to the Rav, and the Rav tells you what to do, and you don't understand what the Rav wants. You're not sure the Rav understood what your shailas. The pan sits in the bottom for 6 months, and then you go ask the shailah a second time. I'm saying that because I have a pan sitting under my sink for about a year. I asked the Rav 3 times. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with the pan. That's nishkin letzanis, but it's just the way it is. The din is dover shebeminyan loy batel. If you have a little milk that falls into a pot of flesh, so there's halachas how much it has to be. B'nais and tam has to give a taste. Is it a 60 or a roiv? But if you have an item that is sold on the market by the piece, it's so precious that you don't sell it by volume or by weight, you sell it by the individual piece. There's no such thing as becoming batel. If there's a piece of meat that's sold not by weight, but by a piece, that's treif. And 1,000 pieces of meat are the same, that are kosher, they're all treif. Doesn't help not roiv and not shishim and not tam. Because dover shebeminyan loy batel, when something is counted, it becomes fixed, it becomes permanent. That's why in Torah there's a significance in counting, in identifying, in noticing the particulars, the details, the aspect. So the Torah says when it comes to the Mishkan, everything had to be counted. Or Moshe Rabbeinu did in fact count everything. The significance of counting everything is that each thing that becomes counted becomes fixed, becomes permanent. And after that, there's no such thing as something that has been counted. It may be very small to ever say, it's not important. Once it's counted, it's important forever. Its preciousness is transcendent. So now, assuming that the pshatel I gave you before is true, that when you count your own money, you count it mit linke egen to see how little you have. And when you count somebody else's money, and in this case, the money of hektish, of tzedakah, you count it to see how much it is, so therefore counting the money of tzedakah is a good thing. It gives a permanence to that money, it gives a chshivas to that money. And like it says in Sfarim Takeh, an interesting thing, and it's an important thing to know, that when you give a little tzedakah to Hashem, what the halachas are, whether it's a tenth or it's a 20%, a fifth, so the lashon is that arba hayodes yeh lachem, you keep the other 80 and 90% for yourself. But because you counted the 10% that you gave to tzedakah, the 80 and 90% that you keep for yourself also are holy. They also have a heiligkeit, and perhaps they also have a chashivas, a worth of a dover shebeminyan, or something that's been counted. So when you're going to count to identify how little you have, so what are you going to do? You're going to give the little amount of money you have a chashivas. You don't want to do that. You want the bracha deibishter to rest. But if you're going to count to identify how precious it is, how special it is, then that counting becomes a very, very positive thing. And let's talk about Yidden for a moment. There's an old Yiddish expression, which is commonsensical, of course. Why did Hashem give us zwei Egen? Why did Hashem give us 2 eyes? And the answer is, He gave us a linke Eig, a left eye, that we're supposed to use when we are judging ourselves. There's a pshat on the pasuk that it says by Avraham Avinu that Avraham Avinu had gepravet mishpat ut tzedakah. Mishpat means judgment, and tzedakah. He gave tzedakah. What's the taich mishpat ut tzedakah? Such mishpat ut tzedakah. First, Avraham Avinu judged how much he needed. and then whatever was left over he gave away to tzedakah. But when a person praves mishpat to tzedakah, when a person is doing a judgment and then he's giving tzedakah, there's two mishpatim. One mishpat is I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, and then I need to have this for a rainy day, and that for security, and the other thing just in case, a good possibility for an investment. Like the Gemara says that if you're a businessman, you're not supposed to invest all your money. You're always supposed to keep some liquid, some money around in case there'll be an opportunity for a good investment. So after you have the mishpat of all the things that I need and I could need and would need and should need and maybe will need and perhaps I will need and my dream I will need, then tzedakah and give tzedakah. That's one mishpat. And the other mishpat says about Avraham Avinu, mishpat he judged how little he needed. And after he made a mishpat, then it's tzedakah. He gave the rest to tzedakah. So when it comes to oneself, a person has to judge with the linka oig. As the expression is, that when it comes to ruchnius, one of the worst conditions from a ruchnius perspective is to be a sameach b'chalke. When it comes to yourself, you have to push yourself. When it comes to zweiten Yidden, darf man gucken mit der rechten Eig. Those mishpatim you make when it comes to yourself. When it comes to the next person, you have to look with the right eye. And the mishpat is a fakerte. Taka, he needs this and he needs this and he needs this. Like the halachas taka by tzedakah. How much tzedakah do you have to give a person? So the din is you don't have to make a person rich, but you have to give a person tzedakah based not on how much you think they need, but on how much they think they need. The din is einoni. The klal is einoni alabadas. If a person had been wealthy and is used to a certain lifestyle, and then the Rebbe unfortunately challenged them, and they lost their money, and now they can't maintain that lifestyle. The requirement of tzedakah is to help them maintain the same lifestyle. That's the mishpat with the rechte oig, with the right eye. So, getting back now to the counting. So to count your own resources for yourself, since the teva of a person is einat tzara, the person's eye is narrow, better don't count, because counting is not going to bring anything good. But when you're counting other Yidden, when you're counting the tzedakah to give to another Jew, faket, then there's a very, very big mile in counting. So to tie Vayakel and Pekudei together, what did we say last week of Parsha Vayakel? What did we say? Parsha Vayakel, we said that you have all the Yidden in one big klal, in one big group. The advantage of having Yidden in one big group is that if a Yid is imperfect, nobody notices. And Kvayochel, the Rebbe doesn't notice either. And Pekudei is you have to count Jews, but not yourself, everybody else. Because when a Yid looks at another Yid, he has to see Taka the mile in another Yid, the positive in another Yid. And when you look at a Yid in that light, then counting is not only not a negative thing, but on the contrary, counting can actually be a very, very positive thing. But in any event, can I keep you 5 more minutes? It's my Michael's. Okay. There's one more thought that I wanted to share, and the clock is being unusually consistent. How does that sound? There's a chazal which is very famous. There's two chazals which makes this extremely, extremely complicated. In other words, there's medrashas chalukis. There's pashta machlekes in medrashim. But the point is that one of the people who was in charge of building the Beis HaMikdash, his name was Betzalel. Betzalel was a sage, a chacham, who knew all kinds of chachma, a Ruach HaKodesh, who was the grand old age, according to the cheshbonis, of 8 years. He was a boy. He was an Ureinikel of Miriam. I'll tell you the discussion soon, but I want to first tell you the point. The bottom line is like this. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Betzalel and says to Betzalel, Hashem said build a Mishkan like this. Do this. So Betzalel hears him out. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Rabbeinu. And Betzalel is 8 years old. And Betzalel says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Efshira de Rabbeinu Shalom gesagt anders. Perhaps Hashem didn't say it like this, maybe he said it otherwise. So Moshe, you take it right. Hashem didn't say it the way I told it to you, Hashem Taka said it differently. And then he says to Betzalel, that's why your name is Betzalel. Because the word Betzalel means Betzel Kela Yisa. That you were in the tzeil, the shadow and the concealment of Kela, the Rebbe, that he was able to know even when Moshe didn't tell him. And there's two medrashim as to what Moshe said and what Betzalel corrected. It goes both ways, so any person can have a lot of fun any way he wants to discuss it. But here's the one we're going to touch on, the one that found in Rashi. Moshe tells Betzalel that the first thing he should do is make the Aron HaKodesh. He should make the Kelim, the Holy Ark. And after he makes the Aron, he should make the Shulchan, the table, and then the Menorah, and afterwards he should build the Mishkan. So Betzalel says to his uncle Moshe Rabbeinu, Vetter Moshe, it's not normal to first build furniture and then to make a house. First you make a house and then you make the furniture. Dr. Moshe Takei, that's what the Eibishter said, Betzel Kela Yis. So of course the question is to use the Gemara Sprach, Meikara Maika Sover or Lebeseif Maika Sover. What Moshe Rabbeinu made a mistake, Chas v'Shalom. Moshe forgot what the Eibishter said, and Betzalel had to correct him. And the Teretz says that Hashem actually told Moshe Rabbeinu two things. Hashem spoke to Moshe twice. Once in Parshas Truma, and then in Parshas Kisisi. You can open up the Chumash and you'll see. Once he told him to start with the Aron, and then the second time he told him to start with the Mishkan. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells Betzalel he should start with the Aron, and Betzalel says maybe I should start with the Mishkan, and Moshe says yeah, Hashem told me that also. What's the Havonah Shebedover? What's the Pnimis of here? It's a lichtike word. It's a simple thought, but it's a lichtike thought. Everybody knows that when a person does anything, a project, there's a kavanah. The kavanah means what you really want. What you really want. But the nature of reality is that soif maaseh b'machshava tchila, the thing that you really want doesn't happen till the project is all finished. Hashem wants to live in the house. What is the place of the Hashra? What is the Merkava? What is the chariot? What is the Puriya? For the resting of the Eibishter, the Aron HaKodesh. That's what he really wants. In fact, when does the Aron HaKodesh get made? It doesn't get made till the end. First you do all the ancillary things. You provide the supporting cast, the Chotzer and the Mizbeach and the Kir and the Mishkan and the Yiriyas and the various other Kelim. And when everything else is in place, then you can make the Aron HaKodesh and put it, the primary thing is left for last. And that's what Betzalel tells Moshe Rabbeinu. That when you build something, first you make the house and then you put in the furniture, and the finishing touches are what makes it ideal, what makes it the way it was really meant to be. But Moshe doesn't tell that to Betzalel. Moshe says the first thing you got to make an Aron, and he allows Betzalel to correct him. Why? Because when a person does something, what they really want to do, they're going to do at the very end. And in order to get to that very end, they have to do a whole bunch of stuff. But from the moment the person starts what the project that they're doing, they have to have in their mind what the end is. The reason Moshe tells Betzalel, first thing make the Eibishter Amocha in a seat. Why? Because though Moshe Rabbeinu knows this is going to be left for last, Moshe is inspiring in Betzalel, and Betzalel should be aware that all the things that he's doing that are leading up to that final act, the Vayaz Betzalel es Ha'aron, have to be durach genum and have to be inspired with the sense all of these things are accommodating the purpose of making the Aron HaKodesh. And the lessons of this, you can't touch life without learning a relevance from this thought. Throughout our lives, and the example that we like to use because it's so relevant and so real, is chinuch. Chinuch has a long process. And we all, with Neibish's help, will have hatzlacha, and the children will give us nachas. Ruba de Ruba, they'll give us nachas. More than, or perhaps in spite of, our schus or lack of schus. Kinder wachsen neus was an der Meibishten's Kinder. But we invest. And the spirit of chinuch is that from the first moment, when we mechanech our children, you have a lot of things that happen until the child becomes a mensch. But we have to know the kavanah of the chinuch of the child. The kavanah of the building Hashem a home is that from the first moment, we're aware of the final result. And if we forget that, chas v'shalom, then we can get distracted. You get distracted by the chitzonius, by the external, by the trappings, and the point gets lost. And when you get distracted by the trappings, so then the point can be taken lost forever. Last week a woman asked me, and I'll conclude with this thought. She didn't ask me this question, she asked me a different question, but it's a related question. We're Yidden, and we want our children to be Yidden. And one of the important criteria of a Yid is that a Yid does things for the emes. He serves Hashem for the Eibishter. He's not serving Hashem for this one and for that one and for the next one. He's not trying to show off. He's not trying to make impressions. He's not trying to get people, people should honor him. A person served the Eibishter aliba de emes, like the Rambam, which I always quote. He says emes mepnei emes, to do the truth because it's true. This is the nature. That's what a Yid is. Or like the pasuk says, the lashon hatznei leches im Hashem alekecha. That when a Yid is leches im Hashem alekecha, walks with Hashem, it's theistic. So I mentioned a couple of weeks back that the Rambam says in Sanhedrin, in Pirush HaMishnayos, that when you raise a child, you have to raise the child in a more superficial way. And one of the things that says is you have to flatter children. You have to give them kavod. You have to tell them how great they are and how smart they are and it sounds like a problem. You're raising a child and you want that child to be in the Chabad Hasidic circles apnimi. That's the language that is used. For me, that's the most comfortable word. That the person should be honest, mitanemis, just for the sake of the Eibishter. And then what are you doing? You're flattering the child. You're making the child feel good and feel proud, and you're almost it would seem developing midas in the child that are the exact opposite of what you want that child to turn out to be. Here you're flattering the child and calling him Rav, and he's 7 years old or 9 years old, and you're calling him a Nilui, and you want that his avodas Hashem should be batnei alechs Hashem alekecha. It's a big dilemma. It's not an easy, Bechlal, who would ever found chinuch that's easy? But just a simple thought, and I think this works too, if the kavana of the flattery is that the child should one day not need the flattery, the child senses that. When the child is told how smart he is and how great he is and how wonderful he is, but the child knows that the parent is thinking and the parent is feeling, this is garnished, this is childish, this is children's play. It's taked dechanechanat al pi darkei, but it's the trivial stuff. The end of this is that you have to be Eisas Emes of Neshu Emes, you have to be a servant of Hashem, where nobody is looking except for Him. If there is that kavanah, if there is that spirit in the flattery, then the child grows out of the flattery. But if there isn't that spirit in the flattery, and what's worse, if you believe your own flattery, the Chachas says, look at my son, he's such a tzatzke, but in any event, it's Wednesday and it's also 1:15. A guten Shabbos, Solomon.